Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Railroad Empires. Tonight is going to be episode 7, where we're covering ground cover. Just wanted to give everybody a heads up. The other 3 guys, I think, are pretty well covering ground cover. I, however, am not. I'm not to that phase yet, and due to financial constraints at the moment, wasn't able to really get my hands on a whole lot of scenery supplies to really do this episode justice. So, in light of that, what I'm going to do is show everybody how I've been doing my foam landscaping. I didn't see any new questions from the last comments or emails or anything like that. So we're gonna go ahead and just get the show going. I'm gonna start off tonight because this process is a little bit funky. It's kind of time consuming. So where I would typically go ahead and just, go through a whole 10-minute spiel of what I'm doing. There's a 13-minute cure time that's pretty much going to be just dead air. So what I'm going to do is show you all how I get this ready all the way up to the pour process. Once I get the thing poured out and it just needs to sit, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to Andy until it's ready to come off. Then I'm going to jump back in and show you how I finish off the process. It's going to be a little weird tonight, but I think we've all discussed it enough. We can just go ahead and get through it. All right. So things I use to do this process is part A, polyurethane foam. Part B, polyurethane foam. These things mix together in a 1-to-1. So what I do is I get a couple of plastic cups, disposable cups, because trust me, you ain't going to get it cleaned out anything else, so you might as well just use something you can throw right away. I count up the ribs on it, and I mark a line so that they're pretty well even. When it comes to the form itself, I'm using, I don't know if it shows up very well on the camera, but I'm using a screen door mesh. It's lightweight. The whole idea in this is lightweight. You could go ahead and use a plaster cloth, but that gets pretty heavy over time. So you also will need some wax paper. I have figured out over the course of playing with this and testing it that Vaseline is one of your best friends when it comes to making sure this thing lets go. So what I generally do is I will take my Sharpie and just kind of mark the rough edges of where my foam is, or my screen's going to be. That way I kind of know how big of an area I need to lay down with Vaseline. Lots of rubbing, lots of Vaseline. Good times all the way around, I think. So this is an extra step that is not generally recommended. Well, I wouldn't say not recommended, but not very well talked about from what I could see. I picked up this particular methodology of terrain forming through watching Eric Siegel's videos. If you guys don't know who that is, I really highly recommend you check him out. He's an O scaler, and he does a lot for the hobby, and a lot for O scale. But the guy's got some really great ideas that I think will translate over to any scale, really. This process, you're also going to go through a lot of gloves. But what happens when you put this Vaseline down, and because I played with it, obviously, is you get, if you don't use the Vaseline, you get a lot of fight. Of course, I am using like Dollar Tree wax paper and Dollar Tree, other supplies. So it's definitely worth having a little bit of extra time on it. So we're going to change out the gloves. All right. Now I'm going to put my screen mesh down. And it's kind of important to keep an eye on what side you're putting down, where the cuts are, and everything else like that, because it is going to pour to one direction. So you kind of want to be mindful of that. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and measure out my components. My experience with this is that the B part of this pours a lot easier than the A part. I don't know if everybody else has the same experience that's done this. It's just kind of something I found. Going to be a little bit of dead air while I measure this out. You really want to be as precise as possible. That one's on there tight.
Do you see these mixing things like they use for paint?
So I thought about getting an automatic type of mixer or something that I could put in like a drill or something like that. But the thing about this is that it's going to cause, it's reacting off of a thermolytic reaction, right? So the more you mix it up, the hotter it's going to get. And you really, really, really need to control the temperatures.
No, I'm talking about.
And if you're doing something
for measuring.
I must not understand what you're talking about then.
Yeah, it's like a 4-to-1, a 1-to-1, a 3-to-1, 6-to-1 mixed ratio.
So this is this is a 1-to-1 pour. It's equal parts A and B. So I mean, you could use a measuring cup if you really wanted to, but first of all you'd have to get 2 measuring cups because you don't want to mix them even by accident unless you're ready to pour. So I just use the cup itself and just kind of I've done enough of these that I kind of know that 4 lines on these dollar store cups gives me more than enough to cover the surface. So that's something you do have to play with. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour. Can you guys see the camera? See the cups here on the table?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. All right. So this part goes really quick, and my experience has been that you do not want to do large pours because the more material you have in here, the hotter it's going to get. The hotter it gets, the faster it's going to expand. So at this point, I just kind of stir it up till it gets to almost a buttery popcorn color. I'm kind of a big guy, so food references works for me.
Yes, sir. Me too.
And it's okay to mix it kind of vigorously if you want to. That's not going to hurt nothing. It's not going to speed up the reaction timings at all. It's more the reaction time is more based on the volume you're doing. Although this thing will kind of kick off pretty quick once you get it down. So I'm almost got to that milky, buttery, popcorn, creamy color that I'm looking for. So you could say that didn't take very long, maybe 30 seconds, if that. So now we're just going to pour it all out of there. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. There we go. And it doesn't have to be precise. I like to leave a little bit in the cup because there's a trick that I've learned to get a nice, thicker, fuller, cleaner looking finish when it's done. So while I'm spreading this out, what's left in the cup is starting to kick off already. It's not going to kick very fast, but it is kicking. So I Just use tongue depressor to kind of spread it out and get a nice even coats all the way throughout. So now I've got all of this screen's pretty well covered. I'm gonna slide that down just a touch. I usually do this over on my workbench, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't have to move it a lot, but because I'm doing it over here on the layout, it's a little bit more difficult to make sure you get it all right. Okay, so now I've got that done. It's all pretty well mixed in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rest of this, and you can see it's already thickened out, and it's kind of airy already. If you felt the bottom of the cup's fairly warm. I'm just going to shake all that out that's left. Dump that in there. Try not to get it all over everything. And now the stuff that's airy, I'm just going to go through and just kind of smear it on the top and get a nice even layer as much as I can, because it's already starting to kick off. So this is a good time to work with it and get it, kind of smooth down to what you want. So if you wanted a nice smooth wall side like that, then you just do it while it's kind of kicked off already. It'll give you a nice good finish. So, all right. There, we're going to call that good. Now we're going to let it sit till it's slightly tacky, but not so tacky that it pulls up. So at this point, we just got time to kill. Andy, why don't you go ahead and jump in at this point, and we'll jump back when it's ready.
All right. So I want to turn you guys on to a new product. So a lot of us have seen Luke Tow and some others use Mod Podge. I use matte medium for certain things too. If I really want it to soak in, matte medium's really good. Most of the applications for ground cover that I'm doing, static grass, dirt, the things we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk too much about trees. I've got a lot of trees on this that I'm working with. This module we worked on last time as I've been working my way through it, some static grass down. But for surface applications, what a lot of people do is dilute their glue. So PVA or Elmer's or whatever white glue is fairly thick, fairly viscous. It doesn't move around too much in your cup. It's got quite a bit of thickness to it. Most people dilute that. They dilute it 50-50 with water, add a drop or two of dish detergent to increase, or actually to decrease surface tension. And what you're adding is a surfactant. Keep in mind I'm from Kentucky, so those kind of complex words. So what I fell in love with, and an audio file turned me on to this product right here. This is called Triton X100. It's a laboratory grade surfactant that decreases surface tension. An audio file turned me on to this as a source for a gentleman who works for me as a source for cleaning records. So what I do is, instead of adding water to this thing, a few drops of this will decrease the surface tension of the water. Of the glue. So I don't have to dilute this. So I don't have to. When you dilute your glue, you're losing more than you realize by that. Of course, you're making it spreadable, which is what we want, but you're losing a lot of the bonding strength of it, which for static grass causes a problem. As you mix it, and I put like 4 drops in this little cup, this stuff gets outright almost ruddy, like it would with water. But you haven't degraded its bonding strength. I'll pre-mix this up in a ketchup dispenser or whatever, and this is just full strength, like PVA, in this case Mod Podge, that is almost as loose as water. I mean, it's not hardly, but it's almost as loose as water, and that's full strength glue. About a half of this with about 3 drops of that surfactant, laboratory surfactant in it. Again, Triton X100, stuff's about $20 or something for a bottle. It's likely a lifetime supply of the stuff. And a few drops of it makes it infinitely spreadable. So this module that we started working with last time, that I'm working with again today, is kind of an interesting arrangement because it actually mounts at a fairly sharp angle up against the wall. It's the top deck. It has the bridge components that set on it that I've got some T-pins where I'm working for the mounts. But it has to make till that basically makes a level surface as our bridge goes across and into a tunnel here as a single piece. So I've had to set this up continually to get all my trees in the right angles and stuff. The beauty of working with modules, being Toma, separate modules, separate components, etc., for a whole lot of reasons. One, I don't have to work this track level coming across here is at 84 inches as it goes across the aisle. So trying to work at that height would be pretty unfortunate, pretty uncomfortable. Also, gluing dirt down is fairly tough. Now, the great thing about using this Triton X100 versus diluting the stuff 50-50 is you maintain the strength and it makes it spreadable, but it also maintains enough viscosity to stick if you did have to work on a hill, where I often do use Mod Podge or something full strength. If you're using that medium or if you dilute this stuff 50-50, it's going to basically run off of whatever your surface is. But this stuff is as spreadable as you could ask for. Again, these are the handy things about these little bottles too, is they just, they spray in place. Doesn't hurt the material to work with it. Doesn't hurt the bonding strength. Makes it infinitely easier to work with. I also put dirt down, not everywhere. If it's going to get complete leaf coverage, then I will not put dirt down necessarily. A lot of it where I've used the green florist foam sections, I want to try to put a thin coverage of leaf on them, and I don't want to coat it too much. That way I maintain the ability to stick trees in it. We may talk about trees in a future episode. We have done a show talking about trees, but here I'm not going to cover any of that. We're going to talk about ground coverage. Now, let's cover that real briefly. The glue is going to tack up real quick. Doesn't set up too fast. Doesn't set up too fast to work with anyway. Easy enough to work with. I use real dirt, real natural 100% dirt out of the yard. It's free. I like free. Also, it's really hard to make anything look like dirt more than dirt. So this is the dirt I get. It's somewhat granular. I get these bacon pans. My wife likes these McCormick rolls, and I'm happy about that. It gives me these pans that I can put in the oven when she's not home. Or it might be good to have a little toaster oven if your wife is not as forgiving as mine. Now, I use a little small coffee grinder, and I'll put the dirt in it after I've dried it out. I'll put it through the coffee grinder, which gives me a spectacularly fine medium to work with. I mean, it's dust. Now, if I've done that and got it down to a dust that I can work with, you could shove it through a stocking. I do often, but to make sure you get a good even coating, one of the best ways to do that is just a sieve. You can make some pretty quick coverage of dirt. I do dirt for most everywhere where I'm going to do static grass. But one of the tricks that I like doing, I'm going to show you real quick in the time I've got, is I want that to be dirt. I don't want a lot of static grass on it. So I'll put a little bit of dirt down, controlling its place, leaving some of the glue exposed. Then I'll come through and put static grass on as a part two to my process. So static grass. Now, a lot of us make these little static grass guns. I do intend to build a stronger one for the rare times that I need a stronger application. I do want to build one with a 30,000 volt or something like that. Reverse ion generator. That way I could do some scenery work and defend my life if I needed to. It's a multitasking tool. But I love this being exposed like this. I can mix different grades of grass in. So I've got, I threw a little bit of dry stuff out that I can, the yellow grass out. I've got a few different grades of grass here, super handy that I can reach to apply, and then this bright green. And I like to work with it without beating on the thing because that spreads the grass everywhere. I want to control where it's going, so I'll use a stick to break these little balls of this stuff up, and then I'll just slowly mix in some other colors as I want to change the color. I'll throw a little bit of other color in. Apply it, and then this thing has these little. I love this one because they have these little metal nodules on it that I can drag across it. You guys won't be able to see it. It's too fine, but you can see it pulling the grass up. Gives me much more control. And so I can put static grass down because this edge is going to be immediately exposed to, at the aisle and eye level. So I want to keep that. So I want to have some grass there. So as you look up through the scenery, you're looking up through and into the forest floor, up through the bottoms of the trees, which, I'm using, fairly large tree stock material to work with. I've got, a stack of trees that I've built together that are, 7 or 8, that are 70 or 80 feet tall. Those are going to make my front edge trees along through here. Then we'll cover trees, and we
All
have
right, we're
covered
ready.
the previous episode.
1 minute, Andy.
And then, but I'll put the static grass down like I'm doing here, especially where I've put dirt down to cover this glue. Once I've got the static grass basically covering that other glue that I want, because I'm looking, this is a forest, this is not a yard. I have a bit of a different process if I'm doing a manicured grass section. But once I've got that little bit of grass in place where I want that, then I'm gonna come in and throw dirt right on top of it, basically the dust, because I want to fill in these gaps. So I'll get that, I'll generate the edge of that to pull it up. And then I'm going to sift in some of the finest dust I've got. Again, this has been run through the coffee grinder. And I'll use, hit this with dirt all over the surface so that there's no shiny spots. And we've had some discussion.
All right, Andy, we're ready on this.
That's why I use Mod Podge. And then I'll just use this one more time to pull the static grass up and make sure that dirt drops down into between the modules. And then now,
I know he heard me. He's just
Go ahead,
ignoring me at
Robert.
this point.
Go ahead, Robert.
All right, so where I'm peeling this thing off there, it's actually giving me a little bit of fight. I apparently didn't put on enough Vaseline. Keep the sick jokes to yourself, boys. All right, so now it's just slightly tacky, still fairly malleable. So now all we're gonna do is go through and put it down right where we want it to be. And I've marked out through the process of cutting and trimming kind of how this is going to line out. Let's see. Here's just where it goes from the bottom. And you do have some play time when you still hit it there, it's kind of tacky. So if you need to work with it a little bit, stretch it and ply it, it'll conform to what you want. So now what I'll do is I'll just run my finger along the top, get it to kind of sit down. Now you can see that it's kind of hanging up over the edge of the road bed a little bit. So what I've been doing is using my X-Acto knife. Where did I leave it? There it is. To kind of peel that back just a touch away from the road bed, and then just using my finger to mash it down on top of the foam. So we're just going to go through and fold it over. Bill was actually asking some pretty good questions in the chat that I had a chance to look at. Bill was asking if this product is self-leveling. It is not self-leveling. So if you're looking for seriously level product, this is probably not the answer you want, but you can fiddle with it enough. You can also sand it, shape it, do whatever after the fact, after it's already dried up, just like you can with the pink foams. I do kind of want to preface that this foam product itself is not cheap. It cost me about $50 a gallon, and it's a 2-gallon set. So you got a gallon of A and you got a gallon of B.
Should go a long way though, right?
Yeah, no, it'll totally go a long way. And I'll show you that in a few minutes, but I kind of want to just get this set real quick. So at this point, I'm tired of messing with it. I'm a little annoyed with it because it's not working the way I wanted it to. So I'm just going to come back and trim it. Mind you, this has already been started to set up and everything. So I just cut right through it. And you see how easily it separates. No big deal. That stuff can just go right in the garbage bin. So now we've got this down. we can come back again, trim up, remove it. The cool thing about this stuff is that it gives you some random undulation, so it allows you to scenic it a little bit easier. Okay, now I've got that down pretty much right where I want it. We're gonna smooth it down up the tops. And we're just gonna set some T-pins in there just to make sure it all cures right where we want it. Once this is done, it foams a hard shell, and I'll show you how that looks like on one of these other pieces that's well set already. Andy, I'm kind of surprised it didn't cure more than I wanted to while you were ignoring me.
Not that 8 seconds.
I mean, it hasn't even been a full 13 minutes, and this stuff's already to a point where it's ready to go. So it's very temperature dependent. That's the other thing is you need to know that is if it's warm and wherever you're pouring, it's going to kick off and get to that point faster. The colder it is, the slower it's going to take. All right, so we got this down. It's starting to look good. Pretty much right where I want it to be. Do a little bit of that trim up process later, but I wanted to show you. I'm going to turn the camera over to one of these other pieces. So when this stuff sets up, it sets up firm. So I pulled it away from the form, and you see it holds its shape. It's rock solid. I can still form it. I can still move it. I can still shape it. So far, I'm really happy with it. It has taken quite a bit of trial and error, though. For the sake of showing you how far a 2-gallon mix will go, that's how much I've used to do what you see so far. And I did do 3 or 4 test pours beforehand, so it'll go a long ways. It was full all the way up to just over the handle. I mean, they fill it up pretty high. Like I said, that's about $54 a gallon. The screen I got from the hardware store, I bought 10 feet of it, 10 linear feet, and it was 79 cents a foot. So it's not that expensive overall. I think it's probably going to end up being more comparable, if not slightly cheaper, than plaster cloth. The benefit I'm getting out of it is it's going to be super light.
And easy to plant trees into.
Oh, ridiculously easy to plant trees into. Like, I'm going to be able to poke it right down into there and not have to put glue on there at all.
I just much prefer
it's got that much rigidity
anyway.
to it.
Absolutely. Robert sold me on this just watching his experimentation enough that I've already ordered some of it because, as most of you guys know, I'm a much bigger fan of styrofoam than plaster. So
we got some questions for you, Andy, if you want to take a second to answer some.
Yeah, if Robert's got a moment in his working process.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done, by the way. Mine's pretty much finished.
All right.
So for Andy, we got South Brooklyn Railroad. So where you would buy that product at, Andy? I think that glue product you're using.
Okay, so the glue itself, the Mod Podge, you get anywhere. This Triton X100 stuff, the surfactant, Amazon has it. About $20 for the whatever size this is, basically a pint or something. 500 milliliters is about $20, give or take. Maybe it's 18 or 22 or something. But again, I think you're buying a lifetime supply of the stuff. And soap suds, I always liked using alcohol instead of soap suds. Or dishwashing liquid. I didn't like some of the things that it did to the glue, but I just bought as a bit of an experiment because alcohol, one, is in short supply right now. So my typical use of alcohol has been stepped on by the world burning down basically. So I was looking for some other solutions for that, and was talking to some of the guy I know that works for me who is an audiophile, and he was talking about needing a source for where I was getting my alcohol from. I said, well, I can't get any alcohol. So much so that I went and bought $180 or something like that ultrasonic cleaner for my 3D printing so I could use something other than alcohol. And then he was saying, well, he's heard these guys talking about this other product that makes water much more like alcohol from the surface tension perspective. And boy, is he ever right. I bought the smaller model of it because I wasn't sure, but I'm sold on it. I think it's spectacular. But Amazon.
And Otis also asked, what was the name of that product that you said 10X or something like that?
It's called Triton X100.
Titan X100.
Biofarm Triton X100 surfactant. Of course, it has a MSDS sheet, but so does water. But it says for laboratory use only. And it's not exactly a soap. Exactly, it's just unlike a soap, which like Dawn dishwashing liquid. It's a byproduct of how it works somewhat. The surface tension. I mean, it's a critical component to how soap works to decrease the surface tension. But it also has all these other things in it. And in order to make glue as spreadable as we would like it to be, you normally have to add water, or I like alcohol, again, because it speeds up the process. But in this case, it doesn't increase the drying time. Normally, if I mix this 50-50, with water, which like Luke Towan does, and basically everybody else who uses this mixes it 50-50, or, maybe 1 part glue to 2 parts water. But boy, it takes a day to dry. I done this static grass and set this static grass up, and because it's full strength glue, it goes off like that, which is why I normally use alcohol. And this will be dry in a couple minutes, and I can vac this in 30 minutes. So, fully just an experiment, but I'm convinced of it. And I know there's got to be some better laboratory supplies, because I've been doing a lot of research on some laboratory chemicals, trying to get hydrochloric acid and stuff for doing etching, brass etching or stainless steel etching. And there's a lot of these things that we're doing because IPA is not available, or alcohol is not available. But because of that, I've learned quite a few tricks. And the ultrasonic cleaner was one of the best things I've invested in this hobby. I mean, boy, you can't get your glasses any cleaner than throwing them in the ultrasonic cleaner for 5 minutes. But sure makes it all a real fast process. And again, doesn't degrade the glue streak. Makes it spreadable enough to work with. It keeps it tacky, whereas I can't normally use water and when I'm doing static grass, because it degrades the glue so much, or decreases its bonding strength so much, that if I come back and back it, a whole lot of that static grass comes off. With using it this way, my static grass stays tough. And again, I can vac this in a few minutes, and very little of it will come loose.
All right, so it looks like that's all the questions for Andy. Do we want to jump over and see what Lloyd's doing?
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I'm doing, I came up. There's a product that I love, and it's the Martin Wilberg mats. Okay, they're not cheap, but you're not supposed to put them like all over the place. So what I do, I'll just show you what it looks like. So basically the mat is a full cardboard, and this is what it is. Basically it's static grass, different heights, different color, and it's easy to tear it. Like for example, let's say I want to put a piece, so let's say right here, and I want something different than what's already there, because I'm also going to put some static grass at different places. So basically all you have to do is tear it, make sure it fits. Like this part of the layout is autumn, so I got those autumn mats to be able to match the scenery. And basically all you do is just put some white glue in the back of it and just install it. It's as easy as that. And what I do is I leave some places open so I could put static grass. Now, all the stuff from Martin Wilberg, if you go to Scenic Express, you'll see all his stuff. He's like just so much of it. For example, there's trees, well, bushes really. These ones here are for summer. So what you do is just cut a square. Okay, I didn't bring my scissors. Let's see. I can. They're all very workable. So this is what you get. And what you do is just remove like the black paper around it. And you put a dab of glue and it makes for a shrub. Now those are pretty tall shrubs. And this doesn't fit here because this is spring stuff. So I gotta keep that for later. He's got different mats, like the one I'm working on right now. It's very thick, it's very bushy, but you've got different ones. Let's see if I can find one here. This one here is also for summer. And if you go on Martin Wilberg's video, you'll see how he uses it. Like he's not going to take the entire patch. He's probably going to just take like really small pieces, no bigger than this, and just place them all over the place, and then it'll come up with something different. Put it. So there's nothing that's consistent when you're doing your with those type of grass. And believe me, he's got plenty of choices. Now for static grass, I did order a static grass from China, and unfortunately it broke. So now I ordered the WWS. Okay, so this is what I have. And it works with a battery, 9-volt battery. It's very strong. But I bought the kit. It comes with a smaller one if you want to do details. And it also comes with a plate. Let me find the plate. This metal plate. So if you want to do your own little bushes or grass tuff, Martin's video, he shows how he does it. So basically you don't have to buy all of them. You could do your own. So what he does is he'll do like a first batch of grass, then he'll dab white glue on the top of the grass and do a second, like a second level, different color, or even go to a third or fourth level for very thick bushes. So these are great tools to have. If you've got time to do your own static grass, go ahead. But I'm not too keen on electronics, so I skip that part.
See, and I actually built mine. I went on Amazon and got me a zap and fly swatter, and I went to the dollar tree and got a screen and just took the fly swatter apart and put the screen on it and made my own.
Yeah, I noticed on your website that you did build one.
Yep.
But honestly,
And it works because I tell you, it shocked the heck out of me.
Oh, it does. And my wife got a hold of mine live on video one night when we were all hanging out. It zapped her real good. She threw it across the room. And they are strong and plenty adequate if you're working real close. But if you want to do some really tall grass, like taller than 6 millimeter, which I would like to do because I use a beard trimmer to kind of make it irregular, it doesn't work very good for that. So I'm interested in buying one of those that will do the taller grasses.
yeah, but like I said, you go watch one of his videos, and then you'll be like very surprised at what you can do.
Oh, yeah.
And you could save a lot of money on this. At first, I bought a few of those mats because I really liked the thickness, the looks of it. And there was one guy, Evans. He often posts his scenery stuff, and I swear it looks real. So it's okay. This is what I gotta have. But then I think I bought a decent box. And I said, no, I can't do my entire layout with that. That would be too crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, it gives you a pretty good idea of what you can do. And if you have a chance, go check Martin Wilberg scenery.
I love his products. There's some
Oh,
questions for you, I think. Ari's got some questions for you, too, if you're ready for them.
How am I doing on time? I was gonna say the base coat. What I do is I'll give it a paint, like yeah, like 2 different types of color of paint. Then I'll put fine. What is it from Woodland Scenics? Fine grass, like very fine, and then I'll come and finish it with my shrubs and static grass. So yeah, go ahead with the questions.
So Human City Junction asks, he says, Lloyd, do you prefer the mats over the static grass applicator? And then he also asks, is it a micro or precision or regular size and the precision that you're using for your static grass?
Well, yeah, I mean, I prefer the mats because there's so much available that you could. I mean, every scene would be different, but I mean, it's pretty expensive. I mean, that like this piece here, this piece of cardboard, which is about 8.5 by 11. If I'm not wrong, it's about 16. So, I mean, there's just so much you can do, and my layout is like 40 feet by 20 feet. So no, I wouldn't be able to do all that. But what was the other part? For the static grass?
What kind of gun are you using? Is it like a precision gun or is it regular size or?
No, I'll use a regular size depending on where. And if I'm doing fine, like 2 millimeter grass, then I'll use that little stick. This one here. This is mainly for 2 millimeters. I wouldn't use. I tried it with 6, and nothing went through. So 2 millimeter is perfect for that. For like if you have to go in the corners, for example, if I want to put some right here in that corner, that's what I would use. It's mainly details, but I mean the big one is still very good.
Who makes that precision one? I've never seen that before.
It's WWS, War World Scenics.
But the fact that they have that little plate lets you make a lot of your own grass mats. But from what I've seen you doing, Lloyd, you're basically using those grass mats, the expensive grass mats, to get the really nice three-dimensional stuff in your highly detailed foreground scenes and filling in the gaps with static grass, right?
That's right.
Which reduces your cost and lets you get a lot of three-dimensionality. I mean, if you guys look at his Facebook page, for example, Lloyd's doing some of the best scenery work I've seen out there.
It takes a long time when you're doing like again, if you go see Martin Wilberg's video, I mean, this piece here, which is probably about 3-4 inches by half an inch, he'll have about 10 or 15 little pieces put together so that it doesn't look like everything's the same. So it takes a lot of time to do those type of details, but when it's in the foreground, that's something that I've mentioned, like for example, with my buildings, which we will talk next week, is that like this piece here is probably 16 inches wide. So anybody who's operating around here will definitely see everything. Now, I wouldn't use those mats if my layout is like 24 inches deep.
So use them at the foreground.
Yeah, it's mainly foreground stuff.
But Martin's not greedy about this stuff too. He's teaching people how to do this. So I've made a bunch of his bushes basically from the techniques he showed on one of the, he basically shows you how to make these little bushes on a piece of, take a piece of board, take a piece of sisal rope and then spread it out. And you end up getting these, little three-dimensional bushes. You can make them yourself. It's just time consuming. But boy, the grass mats, that I don't know that you could get as good of effect with just static grass by itself. So, right tool for right job stuff.
Yeah, the best thing is if you're going to do your own, I would suggest that you buy different mats and then compare what you're doing with what was done. Because if I'm looking very carefully at, for example, at this piece here, yeah, I'd say it's about 3/4 of an inch high. And the top of the grass, because this is like 6 millimeter grass with 1 or 2 coats, and then he's got I presume it looks like very fine, what do you call it? Very fine grass on top of it.
Yeah, like leaf flake and stuff. Yep.
Hey guys, a lot of people are asking where are these videos located at? Can we post a link to get to some of these videos, or?
Well, first of all, do a search for Martin Wilberg, Martin. Martin Wilberg is Welberg. And you'll probably end up directly at his website, and from there you've got some videos. Or go on YouTube and type in his name.
Also, Stephen Bennett is the YouTube channel. The guy's name is Rob Bennett, but search YouTube for Stephen Bennett. He uses a lot of Martin's products and various other products like Pollack and stuff. He's done some of the best advertising for that method of doing scenery products, much like what Lloyd's doing, that there is on YouTube. His work is spectacular, and he uses a lot of Martin's products.
And Martin is doing his entire layout with that stuff. Okay, it's his product, and he's really showing people how to work it. So, yeah, it's worth looking at it.
But like I said, you also see, by all means, you probably need to buy some of them. You should probably buy some of them. But you can also, if you've got the time, make some of the products too. Some of them, especially bushes and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do at one point is sit down for maybe a week or two and just go at it. Because I'm sure everybody, well, not everybody, but some people that I'm sure some people have done those little, what do you call them? Tufts. Just put a dab of glue on a piece of wax paper. Yep. And just use your static grass applicator. It makes it tough.
Well, you've got that plate.
Yeah, the plate makes it easier. Yeah, the plate makes it easier, but I've tried it. I used one of those thin pans I braced the pen with one wire and put the wax paper on top and did it. But that plate is going to make it much easier. But that plate is only 4 inches by 5 inches.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions for Lloyd, so we want to hop over and see what Tim's working on.
I'm doing a couple different things here. Same area we were working on last show. I was actually doing some rock work, and I use plaster cast rocks. I use woodland scenic rock molds and cast my rocks with plaster Paris instead of a hydrocal. I was attaching them with drywall mud. And while I'm attaching, after I get them stuck on, I go around them with a foam brush soaked in water. And I can dab around it and kind of blend it in a little bit. That way I don't have, I put a little more plaster on than I need. That way when I press it in, it squeezes out and I go back and dab around. And that allows me to blend it in a little bit more. What I'm getting ready or trying to set up to do here right now is I just spread out some ground foam. I paint my ground brown, and then I come back in with some ground foam and to add a little bit of texture. And then I will end up putting on some static grass after a couple layers of different ground foams, just to make sure I get a fairly decent covering on the ground. Let's see if I can actually mute this from here real quick so I can run the vacuum and suck up this. Now, when I vacuum, I try not to waste anything. Nothing really goes to waste on my layout. So what I've got is I got a pair of old pantyhose that I stick on the end of my vacuum. And that'll allow me to capture.
Stolen from your wife, right?
Actually, they were a pair my daughter had that she got a big run in. And,
all right, as long as they weren't yours, I mean, we're all right.
Hey, you know, men wear pantyhose too in the military and different reasons. Hunters wear them, you know. But that way I can actually capture what my excess. And I do this with static grass also. And I'll stick it all in a bowl, and I can actually reuse it. So. But as you can see, it pulled up quite a bit of it. And now I'll find something laying around here that I can actually dump it into. Stretch the hands off. And I got that much excess off of it just now. A couple more times here. It also allows me to control a little bit better where my static grass goes and my ground foam goes. So I don't wind up with it where I don't want it. I wind up with it stuck there. Now we've got a base layer of ground foam down. I'll actually come back in with, the standard white glue and water mix with a little bit of laundry detergent. And I'll start soaking the area. This also helps lock in what's already down. I had already put a layer of white glue on. And you gotta be careful that you don't get too much, because I've had some areas where it winds up looking like a big snot booger when you're done. And I may even come back in with my spritz bottle and spray some of this. To reactivate some of the glue that was underneath. And like Andy said, sometimes these high points are really hard to get the glue to stick and not wash everything off when you're putting the glue down. So, and like Robert, I made my own static grass applicator out of a bug zapper. Same bug zapper he used. I got mine from Harbor Freight for like $4.
I overpaid for mine on Amazon. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Harbor Freight had them for 99 cents at one time, and I bought like, I don't know, 10 of them or something like that. And they
Yeah,
do
but I
wear,
think
they
you
do
had
great.
you had to have the sale flyer to get them for that 99 cents, though, didn't you?
Yeah, that's been a while ago, but I've broke numerous of them. I've come up with different ways to make them and build them. And they are great. And I would for sure have one and keep rebuilding them to keep one for the small grass. But I really want to be able to stand up some 10 mil grass. And I think that like Lloyd's WWS machine, either that or I think Johnny at one time found one in South Korea that was like 40,000 volt static ion generator. So, I think you could tase somebody from 30 feet away or something. That's just a bonus.
I mean, and then something else I do with my static grass is this thing's not real strong. Like Andy said, it'll zap you. And heaven forbid you get it too close to your work surface because it'll zap your work surface too.
Yeah.
So what I have a tendency to do after I get done putting the different static grasses on, and it allows me to actually mix it somewhat, I'll come back in and run the vacuum back over it again, and it'll help stand some of it up. The thing with running the vacuum over top of it is you can't get too close. If you get too close, it'll form a little hole where you didn't want one. Right now, I'm just doing some flock. I can do it through the static grass applicator, and it'll stand it up a little bit better. But the flock will, stand up with the static grass applicator instead of lay down. And I'll do a couple different colors. And I've got some different different styles with different stuff. They got the stuff I can sprinkle over the top of the grass when I get done. I can spritz it down with some soapy water and glue and apply this over top, and it'll make it look like a flowering field. And so forth. But guess Ari's got a couple questions for us all. If he wants to go ahead and ask, and go ahead and run through a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah, so some of these general ones we got was for Andy. It says, what brand of static grass you use, and do you have any experience with other brands, or any pros or any cons? And maybe that's a good question for everyone. What products they use and why. And then Human City Junction asked a really loaded question that we've all argued many times. How do you determine the order of when you do things? I will leave that up to you guys to ponder the mysteries of life.
What was that last question
So
you had, Ari?
I
Go ahead.
so the last question was how do you determine which order to do things on the layout? When it comes to the static grass, honestly, I really literally just got into this Friday. I just got my static grass applicator built or Thursday, and just got my static grass in yesterday. So I just went with Woodland Scenics because that's what I found on Amazon, and I hadn't really talked to anybody yet. As far as the process goes, I start out with the track plan first, obviously. Then I build up this bench work. It's just for me, I need to know where like the track level is going to be before I can start putting in terrain. I know some guys out there will start with building in their terrain first, and then like real life cutting in track work and things like that. But to me, it's just a matter of from the bottom level up.
Well, yeah, because basically you want to see something that's going to be attractive. So you need a picture of how it's going to look in your head, or you could do a drawing or look up on the internet pictures of what you want. That's the important thing. A lot of people, when they do scenery, you'll notice that on their layout, they've got pictures that are pasted to the wall, so they know that this is what's going to be there.
As for the order, for me, I just basically go with what I think is going to look good, and I'll do my plaster. There's a certain order of things that's kind of inherent. Like you're going to do any plaster work, then you're going to do your painting, and then you're going to do your top, your ground cover, like what we're doing now. And there's been kind of a debate between me and Lloyd on which is better to do, static grass first and then ballast, or ballast then static grass. Depends on the look I'm going for, on what order I want to do it in. If I want it to look like it's run down, ballast, I'm going to ballast first and then scenic or static grass over top of it. If I want it to look like it's been freshly laid, like main line's just been maintained, then I'll probably do the static grass first and then come back in with the ballast after that.
See, that I agree with, because if your tracks have been there for 20 years, well, you've got grass that are extruding through your ballast, and you've got weeds, or you might have even shrubs, which doesn't make it like a straight line. Like you'll have curves. So anyway, that's the reason I do my ballast first.
See, I go back and forth. I will put static. So a fairly quite a bit of static grass that's done on a degraded secondary line or something. And I'll show you an example. I put static grass down first, and then I put ballast down, and then I put more static grass on top. I'll do the same thing. I will go back and forth, just like you're weathering or something else. You'll do many layers going back and forth between the material. So like this secondary line was done. There's, this is abandoned at this point, or it was in 1950. We'll see what happens as I go to 87. But I did static grass first, and then I fill in with ballast, because you don't want to do just straight static grass without something right after the static grass to cover the glue up that you've used to apply the static grass with. Now, layering becomes another thing to consider with static grass. And there's a layering spray from WWS that I want to get a hold of. It's supposed to be spectacular. And I know people who use hairspray. I have not had as good luck with that. But Mod Podge matte spray, again, I'm using Mod Podge to put it down with. I could Mod Podge spray at a slight angle, and then static grass again right on top of that to get more depth and color variance.
Sorry, Andy. What you're saying about WWS, it's not available in Canada nor the US.
Well, you can't get the aerosol version of it. But a few years ago, when all of us wanted this, we couldn't get it. But they've since come out with, I don't know if it's available right this second, but a few years ago they announced that they had a version of their layering spray in a pump bottle that was not aerosol. So I don't know about the availability of it right now, but layering is kind of a key to getting good static grass if it's thick. In my case, I'm just filling in spots with static grass along the edge of the forest line and stuff. So as I look up through it, I see grass in spots along the outside where sun gets to it. I'm not worried too much about layering here. When I'm doing fields of grass, layering is pretty doggone important to me. So you can use Mod Podge spray or hairspray, works okay. Just hairspray breaks that over time.
I was going to say, doesn't a hairspray become very shiny also?
It can be. So that's the reason I went to the Mod Podge spray, because it's a matte product. Of course, they make gloss versions of Mod Podge as well, but it's a matte product. Another one that I fell in love with recently that I found out about a few years ago was these Design Master water-based. They're water-based or acrylic spray paints, so they don't damage foam or eat any of those products. And I use these on virtually every tree I do now to kind of bring the colors. I want some variants, and I use multiple leaf flake. Speaking of brands, I use about 4 or 5 different brands of leaf flake as example, because they make different size leaf flakes in different colors. My absolute favorite is a company out of Canada called Selkirk, SELKRK, Selkirk leaf. It's really all they make, or it's all they did make, is leaf flake. I get the HO scale size and the slightly larger size, and it's like selective compression. I start with the larger leaf flake, and then on the really large trees, and then on the smaller trees, just like you'd expect, smaller leaves, and I put them further in the background. Same thing with static grass. I use 3 or 4 different brands of that too. In my experience, the Woodland Scenic static grass products were kind of flat in color. They didn't have a lot of vibrancy. But this new recent stuff that Woodland Scenic has come out with in association with the Static King grass maker stuff, it is so much better than the products they had previously. I like Knox static grass, okay, but my favorite for sure is the Midi Nature. That's something spot on.
I actually use both Knox and Woodland Scenic. For your best results.
Tim, you're really quiet, buddy. We can't barely hear you.
I'd say for your best results, your best bet might be to use multiple brands. I mean, it's all going to work pretty much the same way.
Mix them. You want, you want some variety. You don't want it to look like cloud makeup, but you probably do want some variety. So I use a bunch of different products. I use different products in the foreground. Toward the background, I use some of this moss and stuff to kind of fill in under the trees toward the back. So as I look up through there, it stops your depth of field from going forever. So look at a variety of products. And I don't recommend not looking at the product first. Look at what you're trying to get, to. Look at photos, even of scenery, because there's things that when I started looking at the real world really changed my opinion about how to model it. For example, if you look through a forest, there's a lot of doggone trees tightly together. And you can't take super trees, or especially these large trees I make, and pack them in dense enough. So I end up putting a whole lot of little sticks in and then slipping the trees out over those. So I may have 5 trees in a little area, but there'll be another 10 sticks there, making it look like 15 trunks going to the ground. So,
Well, and like you said, Andy, I use a lot of like reindeer moss.
yep.
There's also this other product that I use. Now I can't remember the name of it. It's what I'm using for like the cattails there.
I use reindeer moss in the background. I don't like it as a foreground product. It's a little too coarse. What I use for a lot of my small bushes where people used to use reindeer moss or lichen, again, I like it in the far background at the back edge to kind of block that straight line that happens where you meet the backdrop. I'll use it there. For foreground, what I use is the scraps off a super tree, and I basically bulk them up and then stain them, drop them in a jar of stain and stain them, and then bulk them up, spray some glue down or punch some glue down and push them down into that glue. Let it set up, and then just use a thin dilution of glue on top and a little bit of leaf flake. Best looking, brambles and briars and raspberry and blackberry bushes, which are really common along the right of way in Appalachia.
Oh, that's called Excelsior. I need to remember. Just think of Stanley Excelsior. But it comes in this. Usually, it's in a bundle. You find it at the floral supply stores. It comes in this pack like this, and I just string out some of it, and I cut it to length, and I'll poke a hole using a pick or something, and I'll dip this in some glue as a bundle, and I'll just set it in the hole, and it's giving me my effect there of basically the dried cattails.
And what's that called? That looks like no, I can't remember. What is that called? Look,
Excelsior.
Okay.
So, go with your wife. Go to the floral department of the stores, and just check out what they got. Because I mean, I found stuff that like uses coal. You can find small pieces of gravel. You can find callus, cheaper than what you can buy from Woodland Scenics. They use it for filling bases and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of products. Don't just go to the model store, the hobby shop. Go to Walmart. Go to the craft section. Go to your local Joann's or Michael's or whatever you have to, deals in floral supply.
go outside. You look at, I use so many natural products, and I get better results largely out of those natural products.
Another thing to remember about scenery, rock lines, the striations in rock are not always horizontal or straight and vertical. Natural rock strata, I should say, is undulating. If you ever take a look at what a hill cut or where they blasted the side of a hill out, in certain regions, it's fairly horizontal. In other regions, it's almost a 45-degree angle. When we were on vacation this last beginning of the month, I seen rock that literally went up and did a U shape. It went vertical, and then it did a U, and then went straight back down. There was actually a upside down U in the rock formation.
That's why pictures are your friend. Scenery,
I wish I hadn't been going by at 70 miles an hour, man, because I would have taken and snapped some pictures of that rock formation because it was an awesome looking formation.
As the resident staff geologist, that's called a fold and a hinge.
So the thing to remember is when you're doing it, when you want it to look like nature is randomness. Odd numbers and randomness.
Well, you got to look at pictures too. I mean, again, I say you don't want it to look like cloud makeup. You don't want it completely random to a degree. I guess it's looking at pictures and finding out how things would have naturally evolved, how the layers of sedimentation would have laid stuff. And none of us have to truly become geologists because we've got Ari around. So come into a nightly chat. It's a grand thing about having a large group of us that have different skill sets. But we all end up becoming, like everything else, as model railroaders, we all become amateur electricians and amateur, carpenters and amateur, various things. Well, geology is an important part, especially if you're modeling a mountainous area, Appalachian area like I am, for example, or, if you expect to do a decent job of that. And that's where that idea, that medium that Robert's working with, that styrofoam, came from Bragdon, who makes the rock molds. He makes a material called geodesic foam that's not that dissimilar from what Robert's trying, and I'm going to try. The idea of using foam in this way, it's not exactly, Roberts went from the ground up trying to basically invent a method that works, which I think is spectacular. I think he's super close to having something that is probably the right way to do. Like my peninsula, it's up here. A big hollow shell be a lot better than using $200 worth of styrofoam and ending up with a big, dense, thick thing hanging from the ceiling. So,
and like we said, it all depends on the region, what type of look you're going for. And just sit down and practice. Build a module, learn your techniques, and go from there. Is probably the easiest way that I found to do it. Like Andy said, pictures of the region that you're modeling. You look at every little thing.
And surprisingly, era matters as well. Surprisingly, because when I was modeling 1950 during the war, they had basically cut down every tree around. They had clear cut all these areas along the right of way tremendously. By 1987, which I've moved to, I've got to put a bunch more trees on, which is why I've cleared a lot of those trees off there so I could redo that hillside, because it was kind of like clear farmland or grazing land in 1950. But in 97, it's thick forest. So 87. So you got to look at the era too. So when you look at pictures of your area, again, you may not be modeling an exact prototype area, but look at the general area and what the trends are to find out how deeply forested, how much did they clear along the right of way. In 1950, the trees come right down to the track right away. By 87, they were clearing it out to the right of way to make sure trees didn't fall on the right of way. So looking at pictures from the era, the general area you're trying to replicate, all the guys who do weathering, argue that we should be looking at pictures, and they're right. But the same thing's true about our geology and trees and all that stuff.
All right, boys, we've gone super late, so let's go ahead and wrap this one up for the night.
Yep, it's been a good one. If there's no other questions that anybody has, so we do have Johnny's show coming up next week, of course, and then on the 8th we've got a Who's Big Bill Talking To again, and then you're going to see us again. Actually, I'm sorry, Who's Big Bill Talking To is on August 5th, and then on August 8th you're going to see us again for the next show, where we're going to talk about scene composition a bit again and some structure components. So we look forward to seeing you guys again then. Of course, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below of this video, or you can email any one of us individually at just our first name at modelrailroadinglive.com, or you can email our group at empires@modelrailroadinglive.com, and we'll add your question to the next show so we can talk about that. Please join us on our Facebook page to continue this conversation, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in 2 weeks.
Or you can join us in our live chat every night at whereby.modelrailroadinglive, all spelled out.
Absolutely. And the information about joining into those chats is on our webpage, www.modelrailroadinglive.com. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.